This is the Crowd Crux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Brigman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project. With your host, Sal Brigman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at fulfillrite.com. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the podcast. If it's your first time listening, my name is Salvador Brigman, and I have a very special guest for you on this show. I brought on a team member from Cyanide and Happiness. Chances are, if you've been on Facebook, if you've been on the internet, you have heard of Cyanide and Happiness. These guys run a ridiculously popular comic and web series show. They've raised over $3.2 million on Kickstarter. On their YouTube channel, I'm looking at it right now, they have over 6.7 million subscribers. Looking at their Facebook page, they have over 11 million likes. These guys are a very big deal, and I feel so privileged and honored that they came on the podcast to share with you exactly what they learned from their crowdfunding campaigns. They're kind of paying it forward here. They're sharing with you what worked on Kickstarter, the things that they learned as they've been going through this campaign, as they've been navigating the online marketplace and how to actually market your campaign, particularly for creative types in the audience. This isn't really second nature here. They've learned a tremendous amount and have come on the podcast to share all of this with you. Thank you to everyone in the community who has listened to these shows, who have been leaving some iTunes reviews. We got a bunch of new reviews in January. Going to read off two here. One from Disc Archive. I've really been searching for help with my crowdfunding campaign, and Salvador has been such a help to me. So nice that someone is really making a push for this kind of thing. Thank you very much, Disc Archive, for leaving that review. The other one I wanted to read out here was by NomNom29. NomNom says, I listened to a few of the episodes and the note-taking began. The information is a must for any new campaign or anyone having difficulty with their campaigns on January 14th, 2017. Thank you, NomNom, for leaving that review, and cool username to you also. I want to coalesce this knowledge for you in a very easily digestible format. You know, I just came out with the Kickstarter launch formula, which you want to check out. You can go to kickstarterlaunchformula.com. Has my entire guide here, all of my knowledge and information as how to smash your Kickstarter campaign. And sort of my goal here in putting together this book for you guys was to really lay it out step by step, how to launch a campaign and how to do it in such a way that you are, number one, making sure that the campaign is effectively raising money, but number two, you're doing it also in a way that you're not frantic for time. You're really narrowing your focus and you're focusing on the things that actually matter when it comes to online marketing and online business. You listen to a lot of the episodes in these shows, in my show in particular, you can see lots of different tips. You can see Facebook advertising, you can see Instagram advertising, you can see PR, building an email list, social media, etc. And you kind of have to think, well, do I really need to do all of those? This guidebook and sort of my goal this year with this show is to really narrow your focus on what actually you have to do if you want to smash and hopefully exceed your Kickstarter goal. So if you want to check that out again, that is at the kickstarterlaunchformula.com. Okay, without further ado, let's get to today's interview episode, and I think you're going to really enjoy it, and we also crack a few jokes along the way. Derek, welcome to the podcast. How did this conversation actually come about? Because I've obviously known of Cyanide and Happiness. I've known of your work. How did you actually find my podcast or my blog, or how was I privileged to get this interview?
So I've after running the first Kickstarter campaign for a CNH show, I got really into, we actually made a lot of mistakes in the first campaign, and I got into, how do we help other creators, run a proper campaign. One of the best things we had in our first campaign was a friend by the name of James Ashby, who did the Saturday morning breakfast cereal campaigns, and he kind of was a mentor for us. So having had that experience and, someone who helped us in such a good way, I want to figure out who are the mentors within the space and how do I kind of pass the knowledge forward. So naturally, that kind of led me around to running into Crowdcrux and running into you, man.
Cool. Awesome. That's always so cool. It seems like it's such a small world in some ways, like the crowdfunding community, people out there just helping each other. I really like this community for that reason, because other communities are a little bit more self-serving.
Oh, yeah.
But that's why I love the crowdfunding community. How much did you actually raise then with this campaign that you ran, the first one?
With the first campaign, we asked for $250,000, and we ended up raising actually $770, which was fantastic. Way more than we thought.
Wow. That's incredible. When was this?
This was 2013, early 2013.
That's sort of the early stages of Kickstarter, too, because I got into the industry around 2012, and that's when it was becoming way more popular. 2013 still, I think, pretty early, lots of growth, lots of still new people running campaigns, et cetera. So that was really early on.
Yeah, very much so.
And how did that, so after this campaign, did you then launch another? What was the story there?
So after the campaign, the goal was to launch our own Cyanide and Happiness show. Basically what had happened is we did some animations in 2009, 2010, and tried shopping around a show to major media outlets. And there was a lot of, they had full approval rights on what we could make, and we could get fired from our own show. A lot of just crazy stuff that we thought, that's not going to work for us. So as we started seeing a bunch of people with other campaigns, we did this. We started saying, maybe we can ask our fans. So did the campaign, started producing the show, and we learned a lot of hard lessons in the process of the Kickstarter. But we went into it, build the show. We're just about to next week, actually, the third season of our show, which was originally funded on Kickstarter. Third season of our show comes out, and so it's been a heck of a ride. So, we basically started an animation company with that.
And this all started on Kickstarter.
Sure did. There's no way we would have been able to get this off the ground without Kickstarter.
That is so cool. And also, it just really is in line with the values behind the platform of maintaining creative control. Because who honestly wants to put their blood, sweat, and tears into something and then have someone else tell you how you can run the show? That makes no sense to me.
Yep. And it's only by having the support of a community already behind you that you can leverage deals where that is the case.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool, man. It's also cool I know your brand, a lot of my friends love it. The shows you're producing, season 3 already, seems like it's just like light speed now. What's this other campaign that you ran? I'm seeing here, the Joking Hazard.
Mm-hmm. That was another fun campaign. That was, so we had an idea on the website. We called it the Random Comic Generator. We'd seen websites like specifically Pandyland is the one we played around with. We thought it'd be funny, what if we made just a random comic generator? It took, 1, 2, 3 panels, made a joke. And so Rob, one of the founders of CNH, is like, I think there's a game in this. And he spent about an entire year developing it, taking it to every single party and play testing with everyone. Pretty much everyone in the office and the whole team was involved. But we looked into getting some traditional publishers. But again, it came into the deals were ridiculous. It's just we weren't so much interested in as, we're the big name, as we were getting the product the best way to our fans. So we decided to run another Kickstarter for Joking Hazard. We originally asked for, I think, 10,000, something like that. But this one, It went really well.
Yeah, I'm looking here. $10,000 your original goal. That's crazy. That is insane. And how much did you actually end up raising?
3.2 million after all the pledges cleared.
Wow. That's incredible, man.
Yeah, we had our feet underneath us a lot better in this one. We understood marketing. We understood how to have better tiers, and so thankfully we knew what we were doing a lot better on the second campaign.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's also just an out of the park home run, and what's so cool about that is it's extended your brand in some really cool ways. So you guys naturally in the animation background, creating shows, creating entertainment. Now this is an entertainment product that sort of extends that brand name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also what I love about this campaign too is it seems like you're sort of teasing these out of the audience. Like, yeah, you're obviously having a great idea, but it's also based on all of the audience feedback you're getting.
Oh, 100%. The random comic generator we had on our website, that very much was a beta test for the game. We beta tested everything because I think there's a huge value in that as opposed to just throwing a product page up there and go, hey, here's the thing we made. Even if it's not on a massive scale, like a giant 1,000-person beta test, the more feedback you can get from your community prior to putting a page up, the better it is, because then you can pivot the campaign, position it to help serve your community without having to panic, do it in a panic midway through the campaign, which is a little bit what we did in the first Kickstarter.
It's sort of like making tiny little bets before you make that huge bet of launching a campaign and really investing all of your time, all of your money into that. It's sort of getting a sense for what the community is responsive to, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's a natural extension of the best way to be a part of the platform. Figure out what people care about and then give them that thing.
I'm looking at this campaign, the Joking Hazard one. Was this actually an expectation for you? Like, did you actually expect, this is a $10,000 goal, but we're actually going to probably raise $1 million? Or was this just blew your mind? You had no idea this was going to happen?
We knew it was going to be relatively big. The first campaign, we had a fraction of the fan base we did for this current one. I think our first campaign, we had maybe 500,000 Facebook views or likes. And then this most recent one, we had a little over 10 or 11 million. So we knew it was going to be big off the start. So I guess that wasn't as much of a surprise. So we absolutely planned for a very big campaign.
Also, the big difference here is there's actually something tangible that people are getting when they back it.
Yeah. That was... that was much easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it sort of really buys into the psychology of the thing. Like, oh, now I can actually play with this. Now I can actually have it in my hands. Whereas with the show, obviously it's really cool. There's probably other items involved, but it's not as core central in the psychology that way.
Right. Even when the shows came out, I guess not physically having it or holding it, it feels very different and it feels more ongoing. Whereas, something with Joking Hazard, you got the product, it's great, and we're good.
So I'm going to ask you a very journalistic question here. What do you think the secret to this success is? From the first campaign to the second campaign, what were you really, really focused on differently?
By and large, so I'm going to split that question up a little bit in two sections. So on the fundraising part, it's absolutely pre-marketing and testing out what the community wants. That was, we came in, we didn't market the first campaign up front and pre-market nearly to the extent that we did for the second campaign. So while we did have a good first day, in retrospect, had we planted the seeds a little bit earlier, that would have been a much bigger campaign. So pre-marketing was the biggest campaign fundraising part. Second part, and this one gets overlooked a lot, is we made a lot of mistakes with the first campaign in terms of over-promising stretch goals, over-promising a million different tiers and a million different products. Whereas when it came to Joking Hazard, We had a very simple, we had a few tiers. We had some joke tiers, which is a fun topic. But we had simple products, simple tiers, made it easier to fulfill, and we were able to, get almost everything done by the end of 2016. So it's answer the two-part question. Yeah, it's better pre-marketing and better strategy at the end.
There is always sort of the tension. On one side, you want to satisfy your backers. You want them to be really happy. You want to offer them variations of rewards. You want to offer them lots of cool stuff and swag and ways to get involved. But on the other side, you don't want to create more work for yourself. And sometimes having too many variations and rewards or too much, it just makes the whole thing a huge headache. And that actually means you can't service your backers in a more effective way. So that's a really key lesson that I think you've learned there, and also that some other creators have mentioned on the podcast. In the first lesson here, I'd like to just dive in a little bit here for people that are listening to the podcast and they're thinking, okay, pre-launch, like what exactly did you do to gauge that interest? I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today.
So to gauge the interest, first we started off again with the random comic generator on the website to see, do people have an interest in just putting together some comics? We made sure to we used a bunch of Google Analytics to track, are people sharing this? How has the website traffic changed based on this thing? We pushed out to social media, which we had a significant presence by then, and just test out, hey, here's this fun little tool. What do you guys think about it? And so that kind of, we saw, it was like a 20-30% spike in website traffic when we first launched it. So we knew we were onto a little bit of something prior to making the announcement. We started tweaking, obviously, in-person play tests. But it was, in addition to the random comic generator, it was... we did start shopping around the ideas for some potential publishers to kind of see what their taste on it. It's a slightly different customer talking to potential publishers, but them being the people experienced selling games and on a large scale, the fact that there was interest on the publishing side as well kind of gave us a heads up that, okay, we're on to something because our fans are showing interest and traditional publishers are showing interest.
You have that sort of general level of interest there from both people in the industry and the people that you're serving on a daily basis. After that point, though, you sort of say, okay, we're going to be launching a second campaign. First of all, brace yourselves because it's probably going to be an emotional roller coaster. Second of all, what are the next steps? Did you build an email list? Did you sort of get people who are in the audience to opt into something? Or was this all just like you launched it on social media and it kind of had this effect?
With our website audience, social media, and YouTube audience, we did kind of approach it just from a social standpoint. I do think in retrospect, not having an email list absolutely held us back. I know it was a big campaign, but I've seen other campaigns we've worked with and other campaigns I've just, backed myself. The social media worked for us because we had such a huge established base. But I really wish in retrospect we would have had an email list up and running, because then we could, target people who are even more interested, as opposed to having to use Facebook ads to pay to find people who are interested,
Or even pay to find people on your own page that liked you.
Yeah.
Kind of funny how that works.
To talk to your fans nowadays.
Yeah. The YouTube, too, you just have a tremendously big organic reach here in terms of your community. So you have people who, based on, just the level of content that you put out, you have this audience here. So I think the fact that you have that sort of lends more to social media and lends more to sharing than maybe just someone just starting out trying to do an email list there. So I can totally see that.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say then that as you were, say, posting this on Facebook, what was like the call to action? Were you like, we're launching this campaign? Was it, you can play this with your friends? Could you give some insight there as to like the benefit or the little sales sentence that you were putting out there?
Yeah, so some of the language we used, and I think it's kind of fun. So obviously the cyanide and happiness stuff is it's stick figures for the most part, and periodically we get people on our page, social media, going, anyone can do stick figures. So we thought that was a funny angle. So we wanted to approach it so to allow people to feel like, hey, you're a comic creator, you're allowing your inner comedian to come out. So that's very much the kind of spin we put on it. Mm-hmm. Even on the Kickstarter page, I don't know if we still have the language there, but at the start, it was, people told us anyone can do this, and they were right. So here's a game for it.
That's great. I love that. It's sort of like rolling with some of the objections you get, or like even just some of the things people are saying, sort of make it work to your advantage.
Yeah, it's again, it comes down to listening to the community. Even if it's negative feedback, you can kind of spin that into a positive, like, yep, you're right.
Yeah. That's cool too, because I think that the natural sort of response, particularly online, is whenever there's something said that isn't aligned with what you expected, it's always like defensive mode. And you don't think of how you can incorporate that into the brand. It's more of like, no, you have to rebuttal, or you have to, sort of delete that comment or whatever it is. It's like more defensive.
Yeah, I think, and man, I feel like that's not the right response for a Kickstarter, especially considering how public a medium it is. Yes, there are going to be backers backers, even people outside of the campaign, who are frustrated with it. We had one particular backer who was a $1 backer and was just all over the page saying, "You guys are garbage. What are you doing this for?" And he donated just to have $1 and to post on the campaign. And so we answered, the earnest questions he had, but, there was some of the frustration of the team, like, what do we do about him? What do we do? And at the end, we're just like, well, no, we've answered the legitimate questions. We'll talk to the fan base. But at the end of the campaign, this is the part that we liked. He ended up backing for the $80 tier.
No way.
Yeah.
Funny how the world works.
Yeah. And so being defensive is not, I don't know. It doesn't seem like the right play for Kickstarter anything in the community, because you are getting feedback. Even negative feedback is feedback. If there's some way that you are not serving fans, you want to hear that information, because that's how you learn to serve them better.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other advice for the audience in terms of actually curating the community that you've built? The sort of your mindset into how you've been able to build up this community and build that relationship among so many fans?
It's a good question. I think the one thing is, the one key I'd have there is the things you respond to and the way you respond to them is kind of a way that you are teaching the community to interact. So one of the big things we did during the campaign, instead of having monetary-based stretch goals, we had, achievement-based stretch goals, similar to that Exploding Kittens campaign. And it worked great because we told fans, hey, we are kind of an irreverent fan base. We'll make fart jokes with you. And here's some silly little tasks. And the only reason we want to do them is because it's funny. And so you kind of have to help. It's a two-way street of helping people understand the way you want to be interacted with, and then listening to kind of their feedback on that. And so we kind of realize it's not super straightforward, but it's a two-way street. It's a conversation between you and your fans of what the community looks like, how it's going to be, and you create that by determining what you respond to and how you respond to it.
Very, very well said. The other thing I've noticed just with my own small business is I generally, no matter what happens, I try to put out good vibes, because that really does affect the communications that I get back from the world. Mm-hmm. And if you're putting out negativity or putting out just something that isn't understanding or compassionate, generally you're going to get that type of feedback back, because then it puts other people into more of like a defensive mode. So that's really interesting that you say that. And you've done a phenomenal job, because when I come to your campaign or I think of your brand, I get emotions. I start to even just like smile a little bit. The emotions that you've created with these characters and with the brand actually translates. And that's really cool to me.
Awesome. Thank you.
I want to also get to, some of the more practical tips that you have here for the audience. So if I am in the audience here and I'm really wondering, what are some of the things that you would recommend that I can work on with my upcoming campaign, aside from, pre-launch, really going a little bit more nitty-gritty? So in terms of, let's just say, the social media advertising that you were doing, could you clue me in a little bit there?
Okay, so on social media advertising, so we focused a lot, because in our case we had a large Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter following, and a few other platforms to a lesser extent. Instagram was a lot smaller at that time, but a lot of it was similar to the pre-campaign stuff. It was test out responses in small groups, and then just kind of see what the community responds to. We had video ads, we had text ads, we had just image ads. And we sit there and segment them within the group. Let's say we only want to show it to a couple thousand people. But once we started getting like, oh, okay, well, people love this video ad of the creators explaining the game, but this video ad of just showing, a few like a round of gameplay or something, it's not connecting with people. So now that we've made our small bet, let's double down on what's working. So it very much was kind of a almost scientific approach. That's the core of what we did. It was just very small tests, and then when we found what worked, hit it.
Okay, and on the marketing side, I know you mentioned Google Analytics as one way to get insight about your website traffic. Were you using any other kind of software tools that people in the audience should know about?
Yeah, we had a few. Google Analytics being the biggest one, especially for the page. But we also used there's a little plugin called Hello Bar. Just drag and drop on your website. It allows you to have pop-ups, like little like screen takeovers, where it'll say, "Hey, we're having a campaign." You can have little drop downs that show on your web page, but it's a very quick way to A/B test different types of messaging to traffic you already have on your web page. And that was a fantastic piece of software we had. I'm trying to think if there are any others that we did beyond, Facebook ads and Google Analytics. Yeah, I'd say Hello Bars. For email messaging, that's the other one. At this point, we had a very small email list. Wish it was bigger, but we used a software called Klaviyo, which also let us A/B test what types of emails to send out, and from there we also got a little bit of messaging out that way.
Nice. I use MailChimp for mine. That gives you a little bit of testing functionality. I'm very familiar with HelloBar. I love software like that. Did you use any other services? Like, did you hire a marketing company at all? Did you hire a video making company or any assistance with the campaign?
Video making we did in-house. It just so happened our editor also had music video experience and live video experience. So we handled the videos in-house with also the animation. When it comes to marketing, though, we did have help. We did enlist the aid of Studio 71. They are a multi-channel network, basically think of it like an agent for YouTube creators. Mm-hmm. They work on other platforms and they're expanding, but we had a very close relationship with them through helping us land seasons 2 and 3 of the show. And they had access to influencers. They actually had a dedicated staff member helping with the A/B testing of all the Facebook ads, which did exceptional for us. So we got PR help from cross-promotion within their creators list, and some extra muscle behind testing out Facebook ads through them. They were a great help.
And what was your role sort of throughout this entire chaos of managing the campaign, of managing creative, of having this outside agency help with you? What was sort of your role here? I'm speaking to the crowdfunders in the audience who have already launched a Kickstarter campaign or have actually even successfully run a campaign. And the reason is, I think you will understand this pain point most. And that is, when you finally do raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, the hardest part is not collecting the cash. The hardest part is shipping out all of those perks and rewards to your backers. It is a nightmare, my friends. It's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of headache, and it's a lot of stress. That's why I recommend BackerKit. If you have not heard of BackerKit, they help you collect surveys, they help you collect data, and the entire fulfillment process is just so much easier and so many less spreadsheets when you use their software. You can check them out at backerkit.com and use CrowdCrux for a special discount.
Keep everyone from going insane.
That's a good rule, yeah.
Yeah, but more practically, just make sure all these different initiatives and boxes being checked, made sure they get done. Also, there was a lot of changing things, like even midway through the campaign, there were particular situations where, the guys would go, okay, well, we need to change this tier, or we might hear something like, we've underpriced shipping in Italy or something like that. And so I was working on the number side to help us figure out what moves we can make and how can we make sure to do something that will not, that while good for the fans, won't negatively impact the project.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. One of the other things that sort of like stood out to me here is, in some ways, you guys are very rare in that you both have the creative discipline to make, really cool artwork, to make really cool scenes, stories, and characters, and you also have that sort of business logistics discipline. And it's very rare that a company has both of those. Usually I will interact with lots of creative types who love what they do in the creative sphere, but they don't like the marketing kind of scammy business aspect of everything. Like, they don't want to handle that. What would you say to those people? Is that they literally just have to buckle down and accept the fact that, this, you have to market your campaign. There is a business element here, or would you say something else to them?
So I think the way I'd put it is, if you are in a room where everyone agrees with everything you say always, that is not the optimal way to make an excellent album. It's not the way to make a great movie. It's not the way to make a great business. You do have to, as an artist and as a business person, seek out things that make you uncomfortable or things that you disagree with. Because if your objection to marketing as a creator is, well, no, that feels scammy, the other side of the thing is, if there's no one actively telling you, hey, assume you have artwork in an art gallery, would you tell your friends to go see your artwork? Well, yes, because it's important that people see my artwork. That's the core of marketing. And so yes, it's uncomfortable, and yes, people do it scammy. We always remember the times that people are sleazy about sales. We never remember the times where they're upfront and very forward, because it doesn't feel like sales. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So to tie it up, you have to have that balance. If you have to find people that disagree with your artistic decisions and your business decisions, otherwise neither are going to be as good as they can be.
Very well said. And even just adding a little bit of humor there when you're explaining things, tends to just kind of lighten the mood a bit. It's not a serious business of running a Kickstarter campaign.
Right.
It's more of a part of life, and it's part of your artwork. Mm-hmm. That actually transitions here, because I would love to ask you about this project that you're working on, a book, I believe, on how to run a Kickstarter campaign. And I know you wrote down some other tips here that you might want to share. I just want to give you a chance to talk a bit about that book that you're planning.
Absolutely. So I'm working on a book called Six Figure Crowdfunding. It's going to be focused primarily on running super crowdfunding campaigns, basically anything in excess of 100,000 being their target goal. So it requires a lot more discipline and a lot of slightly different strategies for being able to pull off campaigns that big, especially marketing being the obvious choice. But a couple of fun little tips in there and stuff. that's useful is one, I'd throw out there. One of the lessons we learned with the first campaign was every single stretch goal we added in there. One, we announced all the numbers way too early instead of saying, hey, here is the next goal is where such and such will happen. We unveiled all the goals at once, and that left us an inability to adjust the numbers as the campaign was coming through. So let's say we were having a slow middle of the campaign, and you want to keep momentum up. Your hands are kind of tied prematurely by having set numbers, whereas in the Joking Hazard campaign, we had achievements based that we could kind of scale up or down. Towards the end of the campaign, we were realizing things were going too slow, so we told fans, oh, you got a power up. You can get through this level faster. And we kept the momentum moving that way. So releasing stretch goals one at a time gives you more flexibility to react and respond as opposed to putting them all up front. The other thing is also make sure to price out and know what your stretch goals are going to be prior to the campaign starting. We, again, on the first campaign, did not expect a lot of things. We put in calendars and flip books, plush toy, and the plush toy worked well. But each one of these physical good items, we didn't have originally baked into our cost up front. So we stretched reactively as opposed to stretching proactively.
And that can really, I imagine, with the fulfillment aspect, with the manufacturing and the cost, they can really get out of control very quickly.
Whoo, and did it ever, yeah. I think one of the other things I would definitely point out is, so I mentioned briefly the achievement system a couple times. I do think dollar-based, I feel like dollar-based stretch goals might not be the most effective way to handle stretch goals, because what you're getting with that is it's very focused on just getting numbers up there, but you don't get the added value you do for achievements. So, for example, part of our achievements we had was get our Joking Hazard page to 1,000 likes, or post photos of you with your dad and the word fart written on his forehead in a Sharpie. Like it's a stupid idea. But not only does that encourage people to get others invested in the thing, it creates marketing assets mid-campaign you can use to show the community. I think you get a lot better community growth, and you get almost free marketing by encouraging having achievements and people talking about your campaign, as opposed to making the stretch goals focus only on just the monetary value.
I'm looking at one here. 10 people making a snowman out of pancakes and spray painting it gold.
Yeah, the pictures of that they're really gross. I would never eat those pancakes.
It's really interesting to hear you talk, because there is this fun, really, like, you want to be a part of the group, you want to be a part of like this party that's going on sort of, and participate in this, but it also is very strategic from the marketing arm in that, yeah, you are building your brand, people are talking about it, people are investing more in the company and in the characters, and they're absolutely can look back and say a week's time and be like, oh yeah, I remember when I took a photo of this. So it's kind of cool how you've blended those two elements together. Very cool. I think that this is something that I continue to talk about, but really one of the reasons I started the podcast, and that is we need more and more crowdfunders to pay attention to the launch of the campaign, because we have so many people doing ready, fire, aim, rather than thinking about costs and thinking about all these different topics we've covered in this podcast before they go live. And it seems like with this book, you're sort of breaking down really nitty-gritty what people should be doing or what they should be anticipating before they launch. I'd love to ask you, so where can people check this out, or where can they sign up for when it comes out?
So right now, just an email list on this one. There's a website, sixfigurecrowdfunding.com. You'll be able to jump on my email list. As we get closer to launch, I'll start leaking out chapters and talking about some of the interviews we've secured. So far, I've gotten about collectively, the advice in here comes from people who've raised over 16 million on Kickstarter.
Wow.
So I'll start leaking some of the names and advice we've gotten in there. Just some really fun stuff, and learning a lot about the community that I didn't even realize were options, ways to run campaigns. So it's a very different world for super crowdfunding campaigns.
Exactly. And one of the things I've learned about the online world is you're only as good as the information that you have available to you. If you can find out a strategy that raises 10x more, that's going to supercharge your results. So making sure that you surround yourself with good information sources, and also people who are doing it, people who are seeing success, on a monthly basis, or are witnessing these campaigns and are running them, that's going to just supercharge your overall fundraising success on Kickstarter or any other platform.
Like we would not have had the success we would if it hadn't been for other crowdfunding campaigns and just talking to so many people that have done it before. Without standing on the shoulders of giants, there's no way we would have done what we actually pulled off.
I mean, that's a testament to this podcast. Thank you so much for paying it forward, coming on, sharing your story, sharing what's worked for you with these different campaigns. And this previous one, $3.2 million on Kickstarter. Congratulations with all of your success. Thank you. I'm going to let you have the last word here. If you could talk directly to the podcast listeners, you can share with them a word of encouragement. You can share with them, a tip, or if you have any more. But I'm going to give you the last word here.
Absolutely. So I'm a little bit stubborn. Sometimes it's very easy as a creator to say, I understand this, or, I've been in business for X number of years. But I think one of the best lessons I've learned is being humble and asking for advice from anyone and any source you can, because if you are not if you're in a room and you feel like if you're the smartest person in the room, you are not growing. And if you want to really make your project grow, sometimes you have to suck it up and just ask for advice from other people, because that's how you grow by 10x.
Very well said. Thank you, Derek, so much for coming on the podcast. Looking forward to learning more about your book as it's released, and maybe having you back on again in the future.
Absolutely. Would love to talk again.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Brigman. I hope you've had a stellar January of 2017. And if you're listening to this in the future, and there hasn't been some kind of robot takeover or any kind of zombie apocalypse of any nature, thank you for also listening to this podcast, and I hope it was helpful for you. And also, since there was no great doomsday, you have no excuse not to take 5 minutes, maybe I think it's actually probably more like 3 minutes, to leave a positive or to leave at least some feedback on iTunes for me. I really love the iTunes reviews that I get from some of the listeners here, because it guides the direction of the show. I listen to you guys if you want me to bring on certain guests, or if you have any just genuine feedback for me as a host. I would love to hear it, and you could take a second to leave a review on iTunes. That would mean so much to me, and that would actually just be very helpful also to the show. Thank you if you decide to do that, and also to subscribe to this podcast in iTunes. I will see you next week.